Hello and most welcome to 2003 of the series. And today we're going to have a look-see at Gödel through Francesco Berto. Here, something that was made in the year 2003, the Tin Drummer.
Exhibition Art of Sound, Opposition.
Opposition, art of sound and oppositions. And since we're speaking about oppositions, it's a fitting thing for our lecture series.
Indeed.
And this is untitled, but it is an animatronic sculpture. Animatronic sculpture!
Animatronic sculpture.
Animatronics.
Animatronics! A little boy with a drum, tin drum. Maybe he's throwing a tantrum with a tin drum. Nobody knows.
In one key episode in Günter novel, interrupts Nazis with his drum. Brum, brum, brum,
Oh, it is drumming at the pounding rhythm. The rally was disrupted.
Oh,
Isn't
no.
that great?
Oh, is it good?
The Boy with the Tin Drum by Günter. Well to be recommended. And now we continue with Berto, Francesco Berto. Last time we we looked at the notion of proof and how the proof in a sentence is in the sentence itself. It's on what we call then on the same level. It could also be said that it is inside. Here is also mentioned it's closed. It's not closed off from reality, but it's closed in the way that it's not connected to a superior, transcendental, metaphysical system, meta theory. What you see is what you get. What you have is what you have, and nothing more. Actually, according to Wittgenstein, what you actually literally hear is more than enough, more than satisfying to do for all needs that you will be having or be needing. And mathematics in itself cannot be incomplete. Incomplete. It's impossible. It has everything. It doesn't even need a completeness from above, beyond, transcendentally, or anywhere else. Actually, Wittgenstein thinks it to be a laugh that anything more would be needed.
But it does not mean truth by itself.
No, it doesn't. Very good. It's not a tautology. Neither is it a truism of sorts. So, two neithers here. It's neither transcendental, metaphysical, nor is it in itself in that weird way identical or self-identical. Actually, self-identical is nothing but a laugh. Ha ha ha. As we mentioned in the Alexander technique lesson, maybe humor is at the bottom of all. There we find the big laugh, which is God. Poor old Russell had a vision of an outside living truth beyond reality. And there it also was equipped with falsehood, wrongness. or beyondness, if you like, or if you prefer. I do like the spiral here, so you can see that the text or the proposition or the mathematical equation is more like a spiral than a self-pointing loop. A spiral never points to itself. It goes beyond, but it never leaves. It is not, as you would say in German, unabhängig. It's hanging together, but it's still more. It gives more, it has more, it provides more. The spiral is the idea or the doing of more than you already have, going beyond, aggregating much more, enumerating, no, but expanding. It's the expanse. How little would the world be if you can only take in one side of the contradictions? That's a mutilated world. The idea of quantum mechanics is to bring on the other side, the absence. With our insistence on presence, we actually deter or defer absence. And the absence in the idea of not spoken or needs to be filled out with a meta system, or why not the rather absurd, I'd say absurd solution with self-reference, because it doesn't even mean anything. What would it mean, self-reference? Every term in the language goes beyond and makes more. It's not closed. And we can continue where we left off. We're just speaking about good old Graham Priest. Page 215. 215. 15. And we just mentioned from Priest here, his quote, that you be stranded either in Scylla or Charybdis. But Wittgenstein is stirring midships between those horrible solutions of idealism or giving up the mathematical project altogether. Mm. We become saved. There are more possibilities. We need not to make do with the little there is. Much more and even more beyond. And of course, this is also connection to the machine logic. The idea that a machine can algorithmically calculate the truths. This was the vision of Hilbert, who in his Paris conference of 1900 said, "It's time for the arithmetical proof of arithmetics." Isn't that absurd in itself? Like mathematics didn't work before. Adding a nonsensical extra leg is like putting the cart before the horse. You're doing a piece of nonsense, none needed for. And most of philosophy, if not all, but most anyway, let's settle for that, let's be fair, is putting the horse before the cart. Doing extra things.
Please observe the word Platonism.
It's there, yes.
We have noted that words have different senses
Oh yeah, always, yeah.
Usually it is used in the sense that Platonic world is an independent world, but Greece almost certainly means that they're connected with our world. They are contaminated. Intuition, if you get the point.
Yeah,
it's in a positive sense that intuition, imagination.
That could well be, yeah. And we continue where we left off. Yeah, I got digressed by myself. Sorry there. But let me repeat. It is page 215, and we are currently on the fourth little paragraph, or the biggest one, the penultimate. This point too meets some Wittgensteinian concerns on teaching and learning. Come in and laugh with us, Mirja. I like your laugh. Mathematical calculi as a public, social phenomenon. Phenomenon. Perhaps the most amazing fact about mathematics as a discipline is the unanimity, generally speaking, of mathematicians of what counts as a proof. Of what counts as a proof.
You missed the emphasis. So you missed the emphasis. Perhaps the most amazing fact.
Amazing fact about mathematics, thank you, as a discipline is the unanimity, generally speaking, of mathematicians as a mathematics as a discipline is, mathematician on what counts as a proof. As Wittgenstein remarked, the whole language game of mathematical proofs would be rendered impossible by lack of consensus among mathematicians. Mathematicians! Very good. If the notion of arithmetic proof were not effectively recognizable, then the process whereby mathematics is learned and the general agreement of working mathematicians on what counts as a mathematical proof would turn out to be a mystery.
A mystery?
A mystery. Be secretive about it. A mystery.
Mysterium.
Oh, thanks, Mirja. Come in.
No, it's
Mystery. Of course, this is but a particular case of a famous more general argument to the effect that language can only be learnt recursively, and so the grammar of a learnable language must be generated by a decidable set of rules. Here one understands how the mess we end up in can happen. It is the sound of music. Rules, on the contrary, as Rutley. Claims, if the truths of mathematics are effective or effectively enumerable, we can understand how one generation of mathematicians learns what counts as true from the previous generation. Namely, they learn certain basic mathematical truths and how to prove others by making deduction. Deductions. They are perceived to be machine-like or algorithmical.
Algorithmical.
Algorithmical. Algorithmical. That's such a sweet laugh. Come on. Of course, one can speak against the decidability of the naive notion of proof on the basis of Gödel's results themselves. Themselves. But one may argue that in the context, this would beg the question against paraconsistencies. Paraconsistencies.
Paraconsistencies.
We all managed to pronounce it correctly. Paraconsistencies. Almost. And against Wittgenstein too. Both Wittgenstein and the paraconsistentists on one side and the followers of the standard view on the other agree on the following thesis.
Agree. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
The decidability of the notion of proof and its consistency are incompatible. Incompatible.
What? The disability of the notion of proof and its consistency are incompatible.
Incompatible. Incompatible. But to infer from this that the naive notion of proof is not decidable invokes the indispensability of consistency, which is exactly what Wittgenstein and the paraconsistent argument call into question.
Question.
To question it.
Question.
We have to be careful with the questions. What? 2 questions.
Think question.
Contrary to what Benet claimed, Sus Benet claimed, the discussion of G1 in the Bemerkungen does not suffer from the defect that Gödel's quite explicit premise of the consistency of the considered formal system is ignored. Is ignored. Is ignored. Is ignored. Is ignored. Bernay's charge just begs the question against Wittgenstein. For as Victor Rudich has forcefully argued, the consistency of the relevant system is precisely what is called into question by Wittgenstein's reasoning. Perhaps Wittgenstein might say, all calculi that admit such sentence constructions as the Gödel sentences are syntactically inconsistent.
Inconsistent.
Together inconsistency of the sound of music. 4. Inconsistent arithmetic. The last point brings into play the other aspect of Wittgenstein's philosophy of mathematics, which the paraconsistent interpretation can recapture. Namely, the attitude towards contradictions. After taking Gödel's proof as a paradox, Wittgenstein asks rhetorically, but there's a contradiction here. Well, then there is a contradiction here. Does it do any harm here? I wouldn't think so. For he believed that a calculus within which one can derive a contradiction does not thereby become useless. Does that ring a bell? It should. This is actually from Niels Bohr as well. The opposition of a great truth is also a great truth, or at least not false in this case. And this is the point also of Graham Priest. The contradiction of something that's true doesn't have to be untrue. That is called paraconsistent logic, to be used whenever needed or every time. Can we say contradiction is harmless if it can be sealed off? But what prevents us from sealing it off? Yes, indeed. What? Is there anything that prevents us from sealing it off? Or rather, is the question, why should it be sealed off? Let us imagine having been taught Frege's calculus, contradiction, and all. But the contradiction is not presented as a disease, not as a disease. It is rather an accepted part of the calculus, and we calculate with it. Wow, that's quite a difference. Wow, that's just blown my head. Mind blowing, mind blowing.
This is
Indeed, indeed. It is indeed a mouthful. Not only is it accepted, when doing math, this is what we use. For might we not possibly have wanted to produce a contradiction? That was our goal. Have said with pride in mathematical discovery, look, this is how we produce a contradiction.
contradiction.
Contradiction which makes for movement. Money makes the world go round, the world go round, the world go round, the world go round. Contradiction, contradiction. Because of these insights, Wittgenstein has been considered a precursor of paraconsistent logics. He anticipated the intuition that by rejecting ex falso quod libet, which is the classically and intuitionalistically valid logical law according to which a contradiction entails everything, which is also called explosion.
Boom! Oi.
Explosion.
So Wittgenstein rejected explosion. Boom.
Explosion. Let's repeat. Intuitionistically. Hooray! Hooray! Indeed, we may admit that an inconsistent calculus does not thereby become trivial. Now, if we adopt a paraconsistent logic, the theory T, capturing our naive intuitive notion of proof, is not just an argumentative trick anymore. It is possible to provide a respectable logical framework for Wittgenstein's idea, according to which Gödel's proof is paradoxical. Paradoxical. Come join the laughter for Nevertheless, the derivation of such paradoxes does not render the relevant systems useless. Inconsistent arithmetics, that is, non-classical arithmetics based on paraconsistent logic, are nowadays a reality, both from the proof theoretic and from the model theoretic points of view. Both of them and none of them, or both of them and all of them at the same time. All of them. Inconsistent may be the thing. By not fulfilling the consistency requirement, they avoid G1 as well as Church's undecidability result. They are, that is, demonstrably complete and decidable. Decidable and complete. Decidable and complete. Therefore, such theories fulfill precisely Wittgenstein's request, according to which there should not be mathematical problems that can be meaningfully formulated within a system that adequately represents actual mathematical practice, but which the rules of the system cannot decide. Cannot decide, indeed, no decision. Besides, the perspective of inconsistent arithmetics is typically involved in a form of strict finitism. Finitism we remember.
Finitism.
Do you remember finitism?
Yes.
That we could already go to the end of everything by the onset without having to do it. The underlying intuition would be that there is a finite, albeit hardly imaginable and unknown to us, number of things in the world. Although we cannot specify the number, we know that it must be a number larger than the number of combinations of fundamental particles in the cosmos. In the cosmos. That's finitism. Larger than any number that could be sensibly specified in a lifetime. In a lifetime. In the army. In the army. This is expounded by Priest further down, and I'll just read the beginning in the footnote. A paraconsistent finite model of arithmetic where the largest and inconsistent number n can be obtained by applying to the standard model of arithmetic n an appropriate filter. Filter!
Coffee filter.
Coffee filter! I want coffee! Black, white, cappuccino. That reduces its cardinality. Remember cardinality. More and more without ordinality. The domain of the finite model is m equals m more than n or equal or less than n and equal. Roughly up to n, things work like in ordinary arithmetic, but n has any atomic or negated property if and if only some number is less, more than n has it. So n is an inconsistent number. Inconsistent number! Inconsistent, do you realize? Come in, say.
N is an inconsistent number.
Inconsistent, Mirja, come in, inconsistent.
The number of the beast.
It's also...
Nero.
Inconsistent, Mirja. Inconsistent.
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 Yummy.
This also agrees with the persistent tendency in Wittgenstein's philosophy of mathematics, emphasized by Dummett, Kreisel, and Kirchhoff, and others.
Dummett.
Dummett. As Victor Rogic has remarked, the intermediate Wittgenstein is dominated by his finitism and his view of mathematical meaningfulness as algorithmic decidability, according to which only finite logical sums and products containing only decidable arithmetical predicates are meaningful because they are algorithmically decidable. But this tendency remains also in the later phase. As in the middle period, the later Wittgenstein seems to maintain that an expression is a meaningful proposition only within a given calculus if and only if we knowingly have in hand an applicable and effective decision procedure by means of which we can decide it. The decision procedure, our acting capacity of doing, not the law of the excluded middle.
In hand.
Hallelujah. The theoretical features of paraconsistent arithmetics, therefore, match with various Wittgensteinian views in the philosophy of mathematics. The cost of accepting such theories is clear. It is clear, more than clear. We have to revise some well-established acquisitions of classical mathematical logic. On the other hand, such an audacious rethinking in a paraconsistent framework may nowadays vindicate some of Wittgenstein's outrageous claims.
We rescued Wittgenstein's follower.
Too swiftly dismissed by commentators who took the logic of Russell and Frege as the one true logic. And thereby ending the paper by Francesco Berto.
Oh, we ended the paper.
Too sad.
Come on, more Berto.
We have more Berto on the net. Poor old Berto, what happened to him? Let me look for some quotes. The explosion. I think I'm going to take a video just. What did I do?
Yes, I have to stop sharing. Do you put a pause if you want to write something on the...
It is a quite incredible thing here that the contradiction to a truth is not untrue. That is called paraconsistent logic. And Francesco Berto is showing that Wittgenstein says the same thing. But I need to emphasize how utterly unusual this is. The law of the excluded middle is used everywhere today. It's not even seen as a law, it's seen as something absolutely evident somehow. It's in the background. I can name some examples. People are pointing out the former American president that he said things that was contradictory to what he himself said. That doesn't make any sense if you're taking paraconsistent logic. Most profound sayings need to be contradictory because mathematics, the highest, almost the highest science of all, is in itself contradictory. It needs to be. You can see on page 216 the quotes from Wittgenstein. From Wittgenstein! The craziness of what he is saying that is in parallel with mathematics, but also with quantum mechanics. So it's the second quote down the page, down the chimney, or down the drain pipe, as good old Sylvester, wasn't it?
No.
And the bird, what was the name of the bird? Tit for tat. A bit down there, here, the quotes on Wittgenstein, if you can.
Hur does imagine?
Yeah, exactly. Let us imagine having been taught Frege's calculus. Gottlob Frege was the poor person who received a letter from Bertrand Russell that put him into a state that he never left. Contradiction and all, but the contradiction is not presented as a disease. It is rather an accepted part of the calculus, and we calculate it with it. We use it for calculation. And you need to put yourself into this craziness. We actually use contradiction. They are seen as the worst thing of all. A sentence that is contradictory is the worst of everything. Or a person that contradicts him or herself is speaking falsehood. How can one be led to accept this? Would it be enough to know it actually is the working of the physical/mental world? I don't know, but add this. If you go with the old rules, what will you have then? You will have the opposite. Everything is true. You will have explosion. Yeah. And crazy enough, this is crazy. This is actually a laughing matter. Everyone today accepts some sort of Freudian logic where everything goes. And look at the modern world is not that shaped by that premise that everything is okay and true, or truth doesn't have a value at all. The lesson coming from Wittgenstein / priest and others is, of course, math and reality still counts, but we need to see contradictions as necessary. Otherwise, we can't say anything at all. We need forever to remain quiet. For might we not possibly have wanted to produce a contradiction, have said with pride in mathematical discovery, look, this is how we produce a contradiction. This is crazy. This is humor in a nutshell. Contradiction is necessary. Good old Heraclitus, listen to this. Wherever you are in your transcendental world, once we accept contradictions or understand them, we will be in a much better shape. And all of a sudden, math is not a repeatable, generated language. It is there. It can be arithmetically proven in some aspects, but it is not coming from one single origin, or as Bertrand Russell and Whitehead and Frege will have it, it is not the sum or the set of zero. It is much wider and not closed off by contradiction. This is what I wanted to put on the whiteboard. We need not to close off mathematics with a sharp line and say, do not go beyond there, because there lives the horrid contradiction. It is a much needed contradiction. A contradiction that is the part and parcel of our world. And I think the logicians like Frege and others has made us swallow the horrible idea that contradiction shouldn't be there, and we forget about the poison at the bottom. And this is not a pharmacon. This is just sheer poison, because explosion undermines the whole world. Nothing counts after that if we have only truths. I think that crazy conclusion can only be made by the left hemisphere, because he or she or that, maybe that, doesn't see wholenesses and do not understand what horrid conclusions or results will come if, accepting the law of the excluded middle, all hell would break up. Yeah. So although this is also a bitter pill to swallow, it is incredibly much better than the Fregean Russellian idea of non-contradiction. We will not be lured into that anymore. We are now insulated against that horror. And once more, our doings can decide, and no longer need we to trust. And my personal view here, it's almost like the law of the excluded middle forces us into transcendence. Because after accepting explosion as a fact of life, everything becomes unreal. Nothing becomes particular. and we will have no generalities. It is like every place is everywhere. In each place is everywhere. It is very Newtonian. It's an eerie world where we don't even know where we are. And ruled maybe by a mysterious oracle somewhere. Or a Sauron. Okay, that's instead of the whiteboard. Please come in, Kalle Lundahl and
Put the
Miriam.
microphone here, please.
I'll do it. Here comes the microphone.
Let's just skip the video there. You can actually see me. And this, since we have this option, let us skip it. Let me see. Can you? Let me address just my tie. Not tie. Okay, let me become a serious scholar now. Very serious, because I have these books in front of me. Okay, let me comment on this. This was 216 to remind us. This was 216. So 216, Berto, 216. So this phrase by Wittgenstein, it's Wittgenstein 1956. Can we say contradiction is harmless if it can be sealed off? But what prevents us from sealing it off? Okay. So let's imagine that we are in a laboratory and we put on the white rock and we put something
the white
in
coat. The white coat.
The white coat, thank you. And we have a, let's say, an 8 atom or something that you want to examine. You put it in a box and you then seal it off, so to say.
Yes. Why not?
Now it's already sealed off, or you can actually seal it off.
You can seal it off, yeah, if you want
So, so that you can look it from a distance, that it doesn't get contaminated.
No.
So it will be, in one way, true in itself.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
It will be identical to itself. An atom.
Yes.
In that sense.
But where is the, so to say, the truth? I say that it's actually in the action, in the sealing. Or more precisely, we compare once again with the Norwegian coastline.
Oh, yeah.
So where is the truth? Is it in the Norway, the land itself, or is it in the sea? And the sea line always changes a little bit. It's like if you try to seal off the Norway, it won't. It doesn't work.
And that's actually, yeah.
And this metaphor is very convenient because we know that Wittgenstein went to Norway several times.
He did, yeah.
So let's say that you have a kind of contradiction, let's say, between the Norwegian land and the Norwegian sea.
Yeah.
But you cannot really sealing is not possible.
No.
Okay, and then you have, of course, perhaps contradictions within the Norwegian country itself. Say to say, you can have there, let's say, between lakes.
Yeah.
And the country of Norway.
Countryside, those are valleys and mountains and Alps and whatever they have in Norway.
So these contradictions are harmless, but also necessary.
Yeah, they're definitely necessary. Without water, in a way, we can't have the coastline. So So it doesn't need to be sealed off. And the idea of sealing contradictions off is so ingrained with us. It's been around since, I think Feyerabend had a theory about this. It started before Socrates, but it's not so far away as Heraclitus, but it grew slowly. And he noted that already within the Iliad and the Odyssey was some hints of it starting to come there. And somebody says something, I don't remember exactly, but it sounded eerie to the people then, to some of them. I think that was the beginning of the law of the excluded middle. It wasn't understood completely in the beginning, but then you get used to it. And once you get used to it, you can't live without it because you don't even know about it. Descartes didn't know about it. He never taught it explicitly why it should be this way. How about Newton? Well, in Newton's system, somehow the absence of matter doesn't matter. Pun intended. For him, it was self-evident that everything emanated from matter and everything ended with matter. That assumption he never took up. It was like something already in him. It wouldn't make any sense anymore for him. But that later on, we know today, in quantum mechanics, there is no difference between matter and the surrounding area. The important thing in quantum mechanics is the quantum field. And matter is more of a subjective take on something, emotional or cultural. You see, some of these so-called subatomic particles are actually bigger than the atoms. And some of them just do time. Well, not like in jail, but they have completely other workings. So we are too used to seal off.
Let me comment on the next page 217.
Indeed, go ahead.
Footnote 15. And the last phrase that we read there in that footnote was, let me see, what was the last phrase you read there?
There, the last one I read.
N is an inconstant number.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you say something with normal language what you mean with what is meant here? Or
I have to, what I can say is that it points to this, that this is a contradiction. It's a contradiction.
But I can actually say something about this. I found this very exciting.
Yeah.
Because
I have to add on it.
Okay,
it's a contradiction, but the point it works. Okay.
No. So I have almost finished a paper about the number of the beast.
Oh.
The famous 666.
Yeah.
And there are some manuscripts that give the number of the beast 616.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes. And how is this relevant? Yes, because both numbers point to Emperor Nero. And there is 50 in difference, but both numbers, it depends if you take the point of departure from the Greek form of Emperor Nero, you get
the one number, and if you take the Roman, you get the other number. Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah.
And the only difference is the last Neron.
I remember. Yeah.
Neron, you hear? It's an N. And
you get the N there.
Yes, and that makes a difference. And N in Hebrew corresponds, because you have to transfer them to Hebrew, is actually 50, which makes the difference.
Oh yeah.
Here I found it
A synchronicity.
A spoke is
Synchronicity, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it's an inconstant number that is actually between the Roman Nero and the Greek Nero. When you transfer the difference,
Yeah, yeah.
Nero and
Yeah.
Neron. It's
I
very
like
spooky.
that.
You can
Like
actually,
it.
with paraconsistent logic, you can actually explain both numbers.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, definitely. You need paraconsistent logic. And Edward de Bono, that we mentioned in the previous lecture, said the world would go under if we don't accept paraconsistent logic. Because it's actually the foundation of thinking itself. This is one of the things I wanted to make on the whiteboard. But without asymmetry, there is no thinking. So according to both Edward de Bono and Ian McGilchrist and others, thinking has stopped. We are just regurgitating what has been said before, like ChatGTV. So, and we have become less and less conscious. Consciousness has weakened. And if we do deep examination of people, as been done in neurology, you can see that most people are not persistent over time.
You mean that we need more Finnish sisu or persistent in what sense?
Well, we need to go into the, Ian McGilchrist will say we need to go into the right hemisphere.
I mean, iteration of what do you mean?
Or we should either go into paraconsistent logic.
Okay.
Or understand iterations instead of repetition. Iterations are not sameness, neither is it difference. But it's interesting, if people are not persistent over time, how on earth, why would they even protect themselves? They have no sense of being a persistent person over time. Can you even anticipate how bad that is? It's like your name is Kalle Lundahl. If you're not the same person next week, you wouldn't even do things that are good for you.
Absolutely, I understand.
Do you understand the point?
So it's like what McGilchrist said in that paper. Or he quotes Heraclitus, and then people usually focus only on the change, but McGilchrist emphasizes means also the perseverance.
The permanence, yeah, that's the only way to permanence. Because we know people today are impermanent, literally. And you can imagine the problem if you state, for instance, there is such a person as you, Kalle Lundahl, from birth to death, who's consistent. All neurologists would say no, almost all. And all people will say no. And nobody trusts it because that is not how they are actually, what's happened to them. They wake up a new person, and this is one of the reasons why we are in the modern times. People don't care so much about themselves.
They are like Heraclitus, but in the bad sense. They change.
Well, they're more like Plato.
But without...
Plato consistently complained on not being persistent. And Descartes, it's a good example. Descartes said the soul was something different from himself. It was nothing to do with him. And I think most believers in the Western world, when they say soul, they say some Tegmarkian entity that has nothing to do with you. I spoke to one Christian priest. I think he's very iconic or representative. He said, I have a soul, but nothing of me is in that one. That's like 100% of the priesthood. We need to accept it because it's how they think. And of course, from Ian McGilchrist and paraconsistent, we know why. And entering into paraconsistency makes it possible to be permanent. You become like a river forever. But if you fixate on existences, you become definitely perishable. No doubt, because you become like an atom. And even if atoms do not exist, you will not exist either. You will perish. So this is the scope of this. So my suggestion, do not swallow that bitter pill of law of the excluded middle.
Is it a red or a blue pill?
Yeah, the red or the blue pill.
Let me quote the Bible. That is Makikris here,
Yeah,
page 953. Heraclitus, whose saying is that one cannot step into the same river twice is familiar. Its power depends on the fact that the river has permanence. We call it the same river because it is. Heraclitus points not to change only, but as much to permanence.
Yeah.
Flow which ever changes, but ever remains.
Yes.
There is no succession of things involved in this change because they always flow interpenetrating one another, etc. Let me conclude with a desire or wish.
Of course.
My wish is that we should go through one Wittgenstein paper by a Scandinavian scholar, and here I don't know this person, Indika, but it sounds very Finnish. So please, if you can, look her up, and we could perhaps, who knows.
I promise to check him out. Yeah, sure.
Or her, I don't know. But anyhow, so let's end there. I propose.
Oh, Mirja.
Yes, excuse me, ladies, forgive me. Mirja.
No, please, Kalle, go on.
We finished. Come in, Mirja.
I actually just soak everything you're bringing out, and I'm not yet there to comment at your level, so I'm just like learning. So I will not say anything. Please, Kalle, go on.
No, let me only perhaps look up this.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Mirja, I give you a bell. We can talk tomorrow sometime. Looking forward to hear your suggestions for the channel and everything.
Yes, me too.
Jaakko Hintikka, very Finnish. Jaakko Hintikka. I wonder if this person is still active as a scholar.
Well, should we end there maybe?
Yes, let's end there.
Thank you very much for your comments, for your laughter. Have a good one. Bye bye for now.